Welcome to Android Authority on Air, no lag edition. I'm Derek Ross.
I'm Scott Anderson.
And this week we are joined for round 2 of Android Authority on Air. And in the second round, we have returning special guest, Dan Charlton. Dan, welcome back to the show. Get developing those kernels. You haven't put anything out in a while.
That's going to call me lazy, thanks.
All right, so Dan, the lazy kernel developer, thanks for coming. We appreciate all your wonderful insight. So Scott, what are we going to talk about this week?
Well, first of all, I kind of want to point out, Dan, is that a new shirt?
It is. It is an Android Authority shirt.
Oh. What color was that again?
Red.
Red. Did it say red on the website?
I'm pretty sure it said something like, I don't know, periwinkle nonsense of something.
Yeah, it was some amazing name like that.
I'm pretty
like,
sure
I've seen cars with less ridiculous color names.
All right, so Android news. Scott, what are you doing?
So that was kind of Android news, but we'll get started here. So this week we're going to be going over some Android ecosystem updates, some news surrounding that. We're also going to be going over some app updates. Basically, it was Google app update all the things this week, which was kind of cool. We got some device updates and new releases, and also upcoming releases, as well as some rumored devices, and rumored devices, plural, Nexi, is that it? We're going to be going over some rootin' and ramen stuff, and then carrier news, and we will end it with some patent war stuff by Dan.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about the Android ecosystem, Scott. We had a whole bunch of neat stuff happen this week.
Yeah, basically there was a document that said Google sent out a letter to developers, Android developers, about an ongoing FBI investigation, just to give developers a heads up. And the FBI said that it shouldn't have been sent, and developers don't need to worry, which I question that. Because there are some apps that I know if I were the FBI, I'd be looking into.
I think the investigation was not so much into the apps. It's more into it's developers who the FBI suspects their applications have been sold on other sort of fringe markets without that developer's knowledge. Basically. So there's not like any suspicion that any developers did anything wrong. This is the FBI looking into some other criminals more or less on the behalf of these developers, which is why they didn't really want to have to send out this email and sort of rouse panic.
But panic has been stirred.
Yes, yes.
And then earlier this week, we had Google pass Microsoft as becoming the second largest tech company in the United States. Pretty far behind Apple, though.
Yeah, it's actually the world. But
isn't it the U.S.?
World?
I'm pretty sure that the 2 or 3 largest tech companies in the U.S. are the 2 or 3 largest companies in the world.
So it's the same if you compare it to the world. But they're still considerably far behind Apple.
Yes.
But that's because they charge less for their devices. And, yeah. So that was pretty cool news. And then we have a glimpse, possibly kind of a rumor, but kind of an ongoing rumor of a Nexus certification program. And basically any manufacturer can enter it as long as they meet the hardware requirements that are set by Google and use something like a customization center or a theme manager. The rumors have been coming out like that. What do you guys think about this?
I think it's awesome. You know, yeah. For years, at least I know, I've been saying that skins are okay. Just for the simple fact that carriers, manufacturers, whatever, manufacturers need to differentiate themselves somehow. So they try to do it with skins, but not everybody likes those. Not everybody wants those. Not everybody wants to be, boxed into using that. So we needed some type of solution, and forever people have been saying, oh, it'd be so cool if a UI, if a skin could be downloaded from the Play Store. If it was an add-on. Well, it looks like if this rumor pans out to be true, that you're going to actually be able to do that. You're going to be able to go to system settings, or something like that. Go to a notification or a customization center, and in the customization center, you'll be able to choose a UI maybe. Like if you have an HTC phone, you'll be able to have stock Android, or choose Sense. If you have Motorola phone, you'll be able to choose stock Android or choose, Blur. Not a whole lot of details are out there of what, is it a full-blown, UI and also apps as well, or is it just, a little bit of bells and whistles? Is it, just a skin, or is it a full-blown, overhaul? Like we don't know yet, but the fact that that's even a rumor
is interesting.
Is very, very cool. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the thing that hasn't been specified is if any kind of open sourceness is a contingency of the certification, right? Like, if manufacturers can continue to release closed-sourced forks where they're rewriting the framework and making changes all over the place, it's really going to tarnish the Nexus program.
So does that mean that Sense, well, I guess there is OpenSense. The Sense isn't the best example of that, but TouchWiz, does that mean there's going to have to be a TouchWiz, open source version then, or
No, because I'm not saying that they need to open source their themes or their skin that they're using, right? Like, right now in CyanogenMod, there's a theme manager. The theme manager is open sourced. The whole ROM is open sourced. You, Scott, could go and make your own theme and release it and have that be totally closed source and potentially sell it as an app on the market if you wanted to, right? Like, the full ROM is still open sourced. If they're releasing Nexus devices that aren't open source, it's going to piss off pretty much anybody who's ever bought a Nexus.
Yeah, I agree. They're going to have to, step around that very lightly and make sure they do it properly. That way they can still keep the Nexus, name untarnished, right, so they can still carry themselves.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing that I think that I frown upon is if there's a theme manager and it, somehow bogs down or runs in the background with something going on that's not stock. If I just want stock, then I get stock. Also, I look into like the integration of each theme. Is each theme going to have really deep integration that differs from a different theme? I mean, that might be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, if they do it well, and I'll use MIUI as an example because the theme manager that they package in is really quite fantastic. With a theme manager that's that sophisticated, you can literally change any image, any font, any color, anywhere throughout the device. And, I mean, you can just bundle that up as a theme and add it after the fact.
Well, I think that's something that we have to try to figure out. Is it just going to be through this can anybody, put up an app on the Play Store and download it? We don't know the details of it yet, but I mean, obviously the possibility here is endless. And then if these are thrown into AOSP, imagine how easy it's going to be to have, a native theme manager in a ROM, basically.
Well, the other big thing that'll come out of this, I mean, and the thing is, you can keep it open source and keep the core, the core operating system open source, but still let the manufacturers replace just straight up applications. The problem right now is that they aren't replacing applications. They're replacing the core framework and then writing new applications that rely on that different core framework. If they're staying within the stock Android framework and just replacing the dialer or replacing the contacts app or any of the other applications, right? Like, you can go to the market and get Go Contacts and Go Launcher and Go Everything and basically have basically a Go overlay with just apps that you can get on any device, rooted or not. And so if the OEM manufacturers repackage their skins into that kind of a setup, there's no reason why an update from Google needs to go through 47,000 layers of nonsense, right? Like, you can just roll it out to everybody.
Yeah. But then, I guess, the argument from device manufacturers would be, how do we...
Oh, God, why do we have to do less work?
Well, no, how do we set ourselves apart? It is truly, you can get the same experience on every single type of hardware.
Because they're going to be bringing those apps that you can only get Samsung's S Voice, if you really love S Voice, on a Samsung device from Samsung.
They can do it like that, yeah.
Right, like if you want to root your device and do customizations, that's great. You can get Samsung's open-sourced fork of Android that will build, but it won't have a dialer, and it won't have a contacts app, and it won't have S Voice. It'll boot, and that'll probably be about it. And then you'd have to, just like flashing Google Apps, right? Like they might release that as an additional flashable as sort of their proprietary release, or they might not and say you're on your own.
Yeah.
So Android 4.2, Jelly Bean or Key Lime Pie?
Well, yeah. Well, part of that rumor part of many of the rumors that came out this week, was saying that the next version of Android will be 4.2 Key Lime Pie. And some people, initially, grabbed pitchforks and torches saying, no, it's supposed to be version 5. Well, you know what? Version numbers really, honestly, don't really mean a whole lot.
Oh my goodness, they mean so much to me.
Look at it this way. In Honeycomb, we had Honeycomb 3.0, we had Honeycomb 3.1, Honeycomb 3.2. Even Eclair was, 2.0 and 2.1. So it's been done before. It's not a big deal. Chances are, fingers crossed, confidence high that my sources are correct. It's going to be Key Lime Pie, and it's going to be 4.2. So
yeah, well, I mean, I think the general consensus from what I've seen is that 4.2 is solid.
Yeah.
The name is still somewhat flexible.
And we'll get around to that a little bit later when we talk about some of the Nexus devices that are rumored. But for now, it said, what's the name going to be? Chances are, like I said, if my sources are true, it'll be Key Lime Pie and 4.2. But so Android has a whole bunch of market share in tablets, so more than I thought, huh, Scott?
Yeah. More than I would beg to believe. I don't know. Need to find the source on that.
Okay, so earlier this week, we posted an article that 48% of the tablet market here in the U.S. is actually owned by Android, and
I believe that was as of end of Q2.
And that was a lot higher than I thought. I mean, 22% of that makes up the Kindle Fire, which makes perfect sense because Kindle Fire is the best selling.
That's 22% of the whole market, not 22% of the Android
sales. Yeah.
That's roughly half of all Android tablets in end of Q2 were Kindle Fires.
And,
okay, gotcha. That makes more sense.
And which is why Google went off the success of the Kindle Fire to release, and make the Nexus 7.
Yeah. It's also important to note that these numbers do not include the Nexus 7 or the new Kindle Fires.
That is 100% correct. They're only off of, I believe, the end of Q2. So
So these are 3-month-old numbers.
Yeah, and we won't have Q3 until Q3 just ended, so we won't have that for another 2 or 3 months.
3 months. The spectacular thing, though, is how far Apple has fallen, how quickly.
Well, I mean, it's really not. I mean, with the onslaught of devices that are running...
I'm not saying it's surprising. I'm just saying it's impressive. About a year ago this time, they were at 89% of the market, and they've dropped to 52%. They lost 30% of the market in a year.
Well, they were the first
Android
big one.
Tablets are vastly outselling iPads over the last year. Vastly outselling.
Yeah, I mean, they were the first people in there that majorly in there, that pushed that type of device and were successful with it.
Okay. Yes.
So
successful.
No, I understand, but like they were extremely successful with that, and now people are starting to look for cheaper options that still have the same features, if not way more features. So more bang for your buck.
Yeah.
And I think consumers are getting a little bit smarter in that sense.
Well, I mean, it's getting back to sort of Apple's core problems. I mean, one of the reasons why Apple computers have never sold that well is bang for your buck. They're expensive computers, and you can get a similarly capable non-Apple machine for half the price.
And then you can argue that you get what you pay for, which in some cases is true.
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely cheap makers of products out there.
Yeah. Okay, and then Android 4 dot whatever you want, basically Android 4 is on
ICS and Jelly Bean together.
Yeah.
So Scott, just so in case you weren't sure, so Android 4.0, 1, 2, 03 and 04, as well as Jelly Bean 4.1.1 is all included in those numbers. So 25% of all Android right now is using at least Android that is a year old or newer.
Yeah, that's 1/8 of a billion people are using Jelly Bean or ICS right now.
Still, it's not enough.
Yeah, I mean, Apple may like to brag about how fast they can update, and they do update fast. And this is a problem in Android. The fact that, Jelly Bean has been out for a month, or not a month, I'm sorry, since July they open sourced it, and ICS has been out for almost a year now, and only a quarter of the market has the update. That's ridiculous. That's also 125 million devices.
That's true. I mean, I just think that these statistics need to get bigger and bigger. It needs to be...
They do. It is a huge problem.
I really can't wait to the point where, and maybe this won't even happen, but the day of release, a quarter of all devices will be able to upgrade.
Yeah.
That would be cool. That'd be nice.
I mean, I think that's kind of what they're pushing for potentially with this Nexus program.
Well, yeah, they're going to be able to update more devices faster. I mean, that's the whole reason that...
That's the end game. But,
yeah.
They had that Alliance program, which, people forgot about.
Yeah, but that's because it didn't do anything. It never...
No, I understand that, but, I mean, you can say something and not do it. I mean, I just have hope. It looks like a more solid program that they're coming out with.
You have five, a minimum of five, maybe more eventually, different companies selling Nexus devices. You're going to have 5 times the amount, you'd assume, of Nexus devices out there. So you're going to, or even more than that. You're going to drastically increase the footprint of Nexus devices. You're going to drastically increase the footprint of devices that get updates faster. Some devices are going to be CDMA. Some aren't going to get them as fast as their GSM, counterparts. But you know what? We're still going to get them faster than non-vanilla Android.
And I would argue that they're going to get them longer. And I would argue that they're going to get the updates longer than you would with, you got a Atrix 4G. Okay, you get one update. It's an incremental update, but it's not the next version of Android. You know what I mean?
Actually, there's a petition around right now to actually get beyond that, because Ice Cream Sandwich was canceled for the Atrix. Yeah, but that's later on. All right, so to finish up the Android ecosystem here, there's a new poll going around. Customer satisfaction on Android 4.x is higher than iOS 6, which that makes sense because iOS 6 came out and the world ended. They didn't have, you couldn't get to your destination. You couldn't use Wi-Fi. Siri was yelling at you from the lock screen.
It's missing a lake somewhere.
It's missing cities. I mean, like Sweden's like #2 city.
That's a fair point too.
I mean, but maps aside.
Maps aside, Siri can't tell you your weather, your battery doesn't last, your Wi-Fi can't connect,
and you can't
your device chips all the time, and it chews through data on Verizon and AT&T like that's its job.
Well, and you're holding it wrong if you take a picture of the sun. You're not supposed to do that.
Oh, yeah, not just the sun. Indoor lighting works just as well.
It works just as well. So it doesn't. or it would if you weren't holding it, inside.
Right.
All right. So,
I wonder if Google's going to release a native app, or if they're just going to chill with the browser version, because they just announced that they're going to do.
They'll probably hang with the browser version for a while, but eventually they're going to build an app. I mean, there's still a demand for it.
I wonder how much Apple will have to pay them.
That might be what they're trying to do, is force everybody to use the browser version and force Apple back to the negotiating table on that.
Apple, you want this bad news to go away?
You can't just spin up around worldwide mapping on the fly.
Definitely. All right, so we had a whole bunch of app updates this week, especially from Google. Scott, you want to talk about some app updates?
Yeah, we had a lot of app updates from Google. First of all, Google Wallet did some bug fixes as well as gesture support. What do you think that is going to be for? You guys ever
gestures?
I didn't know I could wave my NFC-enabled phone that has to be a millimeter away from an NFC tag in a gesture to buy. So what, I'm gonna be able to like hold it up and be like,
Yeah, I don't know.
Zorro or what? You know, like.
We'll see.
I'm sorry, you can only make purchases here if you do the Macarena with your phone first.
Then we had some other updates. We had Google Music, just some bug fixes on there. It's a pretty solid app from my experience, and more people just need to go on it. I think it's just the amount of songs that they have is really just kind of hindering it right now. Then we had a Docs update. Docs. We had a Google Docs update, and it was a pretty big update. We had tablet support, UI support,
Cloud print.
Yeah,
and it works great. I tested it actually earlier. So you can now cloud print from Google Docs. Now you have to hit Open in Browser, and then hit the little down arrow, and then hit Print. So it's still in the app, but it's not in the app. You have to hit Open in Browser, but it still works. It works great. I printed to my printer right here a little bit ago. So yeah, that's nice. You don't have to install a third-party app to be able to do it anymore.
Yep. You can filter folder contents by file type. You have the option to auto-sync pinned content while on 3G or not. Also, like I said before, basic tablet editor. You can create, reply, and resolve comments in the document editor. You can also change fonts. You can also pinch to zoom. Pinch to zoom improved drastically. The support for it before was laggy and it had issues, and it is very, very nice now if you haven't used it. So that's nice.
All of this affect the Nexus 7, or is it just for the full-size tablets?
No, it affects actually all devices.
Oh, excellent.
That had it, so it's really nice. Also, you have the option to resume interrupted uploads, which is also nice. That is very nice. And then we also had updates to gesture detection, which I guess they're gesturing all the things in their app updates.
So hey, for $50 you can buy a map app, right? Or you can use Google Maps.
So don't buy it if you have a device that's even remotely modern. So
TomTom, now has
maker of Apple Maps.
Yeah. Yeah, TomTom's track record.
Oh, I'm sorry, was that not a selling point?
If you wish to get lost and find gas stations and airports on top of city skyscrapers for $50, TomTom can be yours in the app in the Google Play Store.
But not if you have an HD screen. So not your Nexus 7, probably not really any tablet, not your Galaxy Nexus, your One X, your Evo 4G.
But it's $50, so it has to
for an app. I know, that's ridiculous.
Okay, so this just in, Google Translate updated, and it has a "Did you mean" suggestion, which I like.
That's awesome.
That's nice.
So you like it because you actually used Google Translate before, Scott. That's cool. Can you tell us about it?
I use it to basically show all of my people that have iDevices that I can do it quicker than they can.
Oh, so you've actually never used it.
No, I've used it. It's actually quite nice.
Okay. All right. Well, that's cool. So
I'm updating right now.
Good. Besides Google Wallet, like app updates, a little Google Wallet update. I said it's part of the whole Google ecosystem here. Google Wallet now is able to power online micropayments, so you can pay for content for websites using your Google Wallet account, which is nice. It ties people that want to be more and more intertwined into Google's ecosystem and allows you to do that. So that's nice to be able to have that.
Big step against PayPal.
Yeah, it is. So let's talk about device updates. We have a whole mess of information this week because it's fall. We have new versions of phones coming out, new versions of operating systems coming out, and year-old devices getting year-old Android updates. So or not getting them. So the Jelly Bean for the Korean version of the Samsung Galaxy S3 is coming here in a few days on the 9th. So if you're one of our Korean viewers, start spamming that update button in a few days for Jelly Bean. ice cream sandwich, announced a year ago in 2 weeks, is not coming for the year-old Atrix 4G or Photon. And that's a little bit of a sad face for a bunch of people that have a year-old phone. So there's actually an online petition right now saying, hey, Google, or hey, Motorola, same company, right? Whatever you have done on the Atrix 4G or Photon to get it up to speed on Ice Cream Sandwich and then decide to scrap it, don't throw it away. Release what you've done so far so developers can do something with it, or at least give us a workable kernel that'll work on Ice Cream Sandwich and Jelly Bean, and we'll take it from there. The developer community is crying out saying, okay, that's cool if you don't want to release it, but don't leave us in the dark. We'll go ahead and take it from there and do what we do best. We'll hack Android. So that's cool. I mean, so people that are into rootin' and ramen, you'll at least have that option available for Jelly Bean or Ice Cream Sandwich if anything ever happens to that. So look for that petition, sign it, post it, share it. Get some traction on it. The Acer Iconia A500, my first Android tablet, as well as its little brother and sister, the 100 and the 200, were announced this week to not get Jelly Bean officially. It doesn't mean it doesn't work. I've been running Jelly Bean online for a while. but officially, you're not getting it. So if you do not root, do not ROM, you will not be getting Ice Cream Sandwich on old Iconias. But, however, new Iconias are getting Jelly Bean, and actually the new 700 actually shipped with it, I believe, right? Or the 110, new 110, sorry. Ice Cream Sandwich for the Pantech Element and Burst is coming out. Jelly Bean has been released by Asus for all of their tablets except for the original Transformer Prime, but the original Transformer Prime said soon. Soon.
Not Prime, just the original Transformer.
I'm sorry, the original Transformer. Soon it's coming. Soon could be
next week or so.
But who knows? I mean, they pushed out the Infinity and the Transformer
300T
Prime
and the Prime,
and the Pad 300 already. So they're Jelly Bean and all the things on their devices. They're doing it right, in my opinion.
Yep.
They're updating their tablets very quickly. So if you have an OG Transformer, one of the original best-selling tablets, I mean, you're going to be getting Jelly Bean soon, very, very soon. Jelly Bean for the HTC X and 1S International, you're getting it. However, if you have a V, you're going to have a sad face.
Honestly, though, that's not surprising.
Yeah, I mean, the V is the low-end model. It's the cheapie. So you get what you pay for, I guess.
It wasn't spectacular to begin with.
I mean, you get what you pay for. You pay for very little for something. It's hard to support it into the future.
Yeah, I mean, it's roughly the same hardware as what was in the Desire HD that came out in 2010.
So on to Nexus rumors, my favorite part of the show. I love talking about Nexus rumors. We had a lot. Last week we had a lot. This week we have a lot, and I'm assuming probably for the next 3 weeks until one of these damn things actually comes out and is announced, we're going to keep getting more leaks and more news and more speculation. So 32 gigabyte Nexus is showing up in so far 2 different retail sales systems. Price really doesn't matter yet. We don't really know anything, but we are seeing a 32 gig Nexus 7. So if you have an 8 gig or a 16 gig, you might be a little upset about that. And 6 months later, they come out the larger version because a lot of people didn't get them originally because they only had little storage. And you could argue, I argued, well, it's a cloud device, it doesn't need the storage, yada yada yada. But still, I mean, more storage is nice. So soon, that we should know more on that if that's actually going to happen. Now, following on that, last week, we talked about the $99 Nexus 7 that might be coming out here soon.
Not Nexus 7, just anonymous Nexus tablet.
Anonymous Nexus tablet. It was pegged as being a Nexus 7.
It wasn't.
Yes, it was.
Anyone who tagged it that way should not be writing for any sort of professional organization.
It's a low-end Nexus 7, maybe. We don't know. How about that? Can we call it that? A low-end Nexus 7?
Yeah, that's like saying
and what about the 3G?
Evo was a low-end Evo 4G
all
LTE.
sorts of rumors. Maybe it's going to be the Nexus 7 Asus TouchWiz 4G Keyline Pi 5.0 edition. We don't know.
It will be.
Only time will tell. Only time will
Can't
tell.
hit that price point with a Tegra 3.
All right, so let's talk about another Nexus.
That's right. You were so wrong, you dropped out.
Yeah, I was so wrong, I dropped out. All right, so the LG Optimus Nexus is pretty much all but confirmed at this point. If you like to believe rumors and if you like to believe inside sources, I like to believe my inside sources. So yeah, so the LG Optimus Nexus is coming out soon, most likely to be announced at the end of the month with a November launch date. It might be announced by Andy Rubin when he talks at All Things D here in the near future. It's a mobile conference at the end of October. Maybe that is when it'll be announced, or maybe even the Nexus program will be announced then, and then we'll see a phone announced, a week or two later. But either way, Andy Rubin in a few weeks. So for him not to say anything is going to be highly unlikely, in my opinion. Rumors are speculating that Google hopes to have 5 Nexus devices, the thing that the Wall Street Journal talked about many, many moons ago. Now earlier we were talking about Nexus rumors and Keyline Pi, Jelly Bean, version numbers, yada yada yada. So the next version of Android is speculated to basically look and feel like Jelly Bean, obviously, because Jelly Bean looks and feels like ice cream sandwich, except it's a little faster. I mean, they got everything right. Now they're just polishing, they're tweaking. They're not adding major features. They're just building on something good. And supposedly we're going to see improved power management. Some type of new, fascinating, awesome Google Play Store edition. They're going to be laying the groundwork for 5.0 for when the major changes happen. We're going to have maybe home screens is tabs. So home screens are going to go away, and you're going to hit a tab at the top to move around between your different home screens. You're not going to swipe around, maybe. We don't really know. Then, as well as what we talked about earlier, the big thing, in my opinion, is the Nexus Customization Center. What do you guys think about those speculations about the upcoming versions of Android and the LG Optimus Nexus?
I mean, it's interesting. I'm not really going to take too seriously any UI change rumors until I see them. I mean, it's so hard to rumor about a UI change until you actually know what you're looking at.
And you witness it.
I think it's fairly. I mean, it makes sense.
I think it would be a step in the right direction. I think changing some things right now would be good and new and fresh. How many times Google changed the Android market? Now we know it's being the Google Play Store. I mean, they like changing things, and I think Google users like change. Especially when it's better, in the right direction, to something that is more concise and better. So I'm liking it.
So, continuing with Nexus rumors, once again, we had a report of, the Samsung Galaxy S2, the HTC Bix-based device, the Droid Incredible X.
In non-Nexus device news, though, the LG Optimus G, on which the Nexus LG is supposed to be based, appears to be heading to both Sprint and AT&T with, absolutely no information at all when that's going to be. But apparently the AT&T version will only have an 8-megapixel camera because, I don't know, AT&T doesn't really like their customers. There are rumors apparently of a Samsung Galaxy S3 Mini, by which they mean a 4-inch device.
Which is that's kind of funny. That I don't know why.
The iPhone 5 just went up to being 4 inches, and when Samsung makes a phone at that size, it's a mini.
I know.
That would be actually kind of like a nobody buy this, but it's just a FU to Apple.
Yeah.
And that'd be so funny if they decided to make like a limited supply of them so that they could just make fun of them. That'd be a step in the wrong direction.
I mean, I think they're doing it just to do it. Like you said, the iPhone 5 is a 4-inch device, and now they're like, hey, look, we can come out with a 4 too. Because why? We have the #1 selling Android phone. Why not? Why not experiment? And you know what? Screw lawsuits. We don't care. We'll just make something smaller.
Just keep throwing more devices on the market until people buy them.
Yep.
We're going to have 87 4-inch devices, so that your users have way more choice than you.
Well, it's not like Samsung hasn't made a 4-inch device before.
Oh, no, I understand that.
And the One X Plus appears to be exclusively going to AT&T.
Yeah.
Exclusivity for the loss.
I hate that. I really, really do not like it. But that's how they throw around their money, and that's how they make a lot of money, and that's how they guarantee to sell devices for certain manufacturers.
Yeah.
You know, so, all part of carrier politics.
And speaking of carriers, we had some major carrier news this week.
Yeah, we had basically T-Mobile is going to merge with Metro PCS, and by merger I mean they're going to operate as 2 separate companies, but T-Mobile is going to own them.
No.
No.
No, that's not at all what you mean.
No, that is. He actually doesn't mean that. And that was actually a test to see if Dan and I were paying attention. They're actually going to operate as T-Mobile. That is, if Sprint doesn't actually buy them, because Sprint now jumped in.
No, this is inked. This is now just pending government approval.
Today Sprint announced that they'd like an opportunity to buy them, though.
Presumably that ends after Metro PCS has already signed paperwork allowing somebody else to buy them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sprint was in talks with Metro PCS and tried to buy them, and Sprint's board said no. Sprint really doesn't get the opportunity to come back 6 months later and say, oh no, our board was lying, we really do want to buy you. And particularly not after they've already signed a deal. Plus, Metro PCS is going to get a way better deal out of this than they were ever going to get from Sprint. Because
what's good for Sprint is Sprint is just starting to roll out LTE, and Metro PCS already has an established LTE network with voice over LTE capabilities. So that's
and a
great
very
news.
tiny footprint.
You know that's great. That's great news.
Yeah, but I mean it's a good deal for Metro PCS because the brand will operate as T-Mobile. Really, Metro PCS is getting T-Mobile out of this.
Yeah.
Right? It's a reverse merger. So Deutsche Telekom, the owner of T-Mobile USA, is going to own 76% of the new entity, and Metro basically is going to own 24%, and then they're just going to start selling back the shares so then it'll be a standalone company and not part of Deutsche Telekom anymore.
And they're
Plus Metro's getting $1.5 billion out of the deal. They're
going to eventually then phase out the Metro PCS CDMA in a few years.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, so Metro, one of the things that they said was that most of their users, the vast majority of their users, replace devices every 12 to 18 months, so they can just atrophy people off the network fairly quickly.
Yeah, that'll be good.
And in exchange, T-Mobile gets a lot more spectrum, a lot of AWS spectrum to build out either their LTE or their HSPA+, and then a lot of other 2G band.
I mean, and that's great for T-Mobile because they're a very popular small. For their size, they're a great carrier. I mean, I wish I had T-Mobile service here. I would probably drop Verizon in a second for them, but I don't. Yeah, exactly. And in the data plans, I mean, there are no comparisons.
I mean, I have T-Mobile. I like the carrier a lot.
Yeah.
Now, what kind of spectrum are they gaining out of this deal?
A lot of AWS spectrum, and really the big benefit is going to be not so much in new stuff as it's going to be in stacking on top of what they already have. So they'll be able to. One of Sprint's problems with their LTE is that they're delivering it over a very narrow band. I believe it's on 5 megahertz compared to Verizon and AT&T's 10 megahertz of each individual block of LTE that's going out.
Okay.
I mean, that's not a very good way of describing it, and that's not technically very accurate. But because Verizon and AT&T are using a wider band, they can basically provide higher speeds. And this will allow T-Mobile to stack together their 5 plus Metro's 5 in a lot of areas where they can do the wider bands when they would not have otherwise been able to. It's also going to allow them to pick up a lot of coverage in specific geographic areas where Metro has a lot of spectrum and a lot of coverage, and T-Mobile doesn't, particularly the Northeast and a couple of other random places like mid-Michigan and Dallas and Florida. Metro's in a lot of weird places.
Yeah. I mean, it should be interesting coverage-wise to see if T-Mobile will increase their coverage. I mean, around where I am, I've heard good and bad. It's kind of a hit or miss where I am. So, I don't know.
We had some other carrier news, a few things here and there. EE is set to turn on.
That's everything everywhere.
Everything everywhere, yeah. They're set to turn on.
What is it, Orange and T-Mobile UK?
Yeah, they're a UK carrier. By 10:30, they're going to start turning on LTE, and they hope to have a nationwide rollout by the summer of 2013, so a little less than a year from now in the UK.
And that's the first of their kind, right?
Yes.
Yes. In the UK, they're still waiting for an auction of spectrum that everybody else wants to use for LTE. T-Mobile and I think it's Orange have basically are merging together and forming everything everywhere and repurposing old spectrum of theirs into an LTE frequency. So they're pushing LTE before any of their competitors have even purchased the spectrum to do it on. So, and for perspective on why they can roll out so fast, the UK is not a very large country.
Is it a good version or good base version of LTE to start growing upon? Because I know that,
I don't know enough of the tech details on it.
Okay. Because I know Sprint is starting off on a good area, expandability-wise.
Mm-hmm.
And
I don't know enough about the network architecture that they're using for it.
Okay.
And then Light Squared. Oh, Light Squared.
Light Squared, it looks good on paper.
Yeah. Light Squared is trying again, reframing pieces of their spectrum holdings in the hope that they can maybe get some kind of something out of it, or else they're going to owe a lot of people a lot of money.
I hope they're successful. I mean, it's another competitor to the high-speed mobile data networks. Competition. Yeah. I mean, I follow what they're doing. I think it's a good initiative, but so far that they just can't seem to get it off the ground.
Yeah, I mean, Light Squared really, I think, kind of got shafted by the government on this one. Because the problem isn't that there's something wrong with Light Squared spectrum. The problem is that GPS makers are building shoddy devices not by that. Right? Like, if AT&T build devices that spilled over onto Verizon's network, Verizon would be pissed.
Yep.
And yet, it wouldn't be Verizon's problem, it would be AT&T's problem to fix it. Right? Like, this is basically Light Square getting told, oh no, these other people are doing their job so badly that, you doing yours within your own rights would infringe on theirs. So you can't actually, use this stuff that you own because these people that don't own it are using it.
But would the GPS be the carriers, or would that be the manufacturers?
It's not the carriers. It's manufacturers of GPS equipment.
Okay. And ultimately, that can't be reversed. I mean...
Well, it can't. There's a lot of options. I mean, one thing that has been suggested is basically force the government to buy back chunks of Light Squared spectrum. Because they're basically saying this spectrum is reserved for GPS.
Yeah.
If you're going to say it's reserved for GPS, then you better be willing to buy it back.
Yeah.
The reason why that's not going to happen is because it's technically the spectrum that they own is approved for satellite communications, and they're trying to get it authorized to repurpose it for a terrestrial network. When it is being used for satellite purposes, it's not a problem for GPS. Which is one of the reasons why it was originally, slated for satellite use.
So let's talk about our favorite thing, patent wars. I believe Dan's favorite female judge did some interesting things this week.
Yes. So in Samsung's filing to set aside the jury verdict, as more details are coming out on it, they're at this point pretty much accusing the jury foreman of fraud. So evidently the jury foreman used to work for, I think it's Seagate.
Yes.
And it got into some kind of legal kerfuffle with his one-time employer. And the problem here would be that the majority owner of Seagate is Samsung. Technically, he didn't break any rules because the litigation was far enough back that it didn't violate any disclosure rules, but that is certainly something that, you'd think is kind of biased. He basically got sued by Samsung in the past. And he went bankrupt because of it.
The one that said he was the jury foreman. He's the one that won patent and said, everybody, yep, they're bad. Yep. Infringed.
Yeah. And other jurors have backed that up. And he was previously sued by Samsung, lost, and went bankrupt. No, he has no motive to go back at Samsung at all.
I just don't understand why that wasn't
disclosed?
Yeah.
That's one of the things that Samsung's saying. Why wasn't this disclosed?
It's very odd.
Yes. Also in the courtroom of Lucy Coe, she has now rescinded her ban on Galaxy Tab 10.1 after saying that she lacked the jurisdiction to do so, because I really don't know why she thought that. The appeals court disagreed with her and told her, no, really, you do need to make a decision, and you do have the authority to revoke your own injunction. And the way device and preliminary injunctions work is the person asking for it, in this case Apple, has to put up a bond to secure the injunction. Basically saying, in the event that you enjoin this on our say-so, and it's found not to be infringing, we're coughing up all of this money to pay for damages. Apple is definitely on the hook for their $2.6 million bond, but potentially more than that for every not sold device during the time that they were banned. Realistically, we're talking about the Galaxy Tab 10.1, so what, they're $500 a pop. We're talking about maybe $5,000.
And it's very small.
Hit or miss, I think that's about right.
Yeah. And in other patent news, Motorola's big case against, well, absolutely everything that Apple makes has been withdrawn for no reason whatsoever.
Yeah, so the question is there was a rumor back a few weeks ago that Tim Cook and Larry Page were going to meet. Did they meet?
I don't know. I can tell you that quid pro quo like that in an explicit sense of if there is a signed deal, the fact that there is any kind of a signed deal not being disclosed while withdrawing the case would be a legal problem for both parties. So I would assume at this point there has been no formal agreement.
So I'm curious why they dropped it then.
However, one party suggesting that the other one dropping their litigation might allow for a more favorable negotiating position is totally fine, which is probably why Motorola hasn't really given any details on why they've pulled this filing. They've also, though, not done it with prejudice, so they are free to refile at any time they want. So this could be for a lot of reasons, right? Like Motorola could have realized that there was something wrong in their filing documentation and just decided to pull the case altogether so they can refile it later properly without whatever error it was, rather than allow that to be the reason the case gets tossed. It could be that, they decided a certain patent wasn't very strong and they want to rework the arguments. I mean, there could be any number of not peaceful reasons to it.
Could they have determined that maybe they were overreaching and trying to make other devices infringe on too many things?
I mean, it could be that. I mean, it's a lot. If it were something that mundane of saying, oh, we're not actually going to use this patent or we're not going to assert this one against these devices, that's a simple amendment to the filing.
Oh, okay.
I would think that there'd have to be something more fundamentally wrong with the filing.
Okay.
That would make them want to withdraw it to refile. if that's their strategy. I suspect it's more likely that they've withdrawn it for other political reasons, potentially trying to settle things down with Apple.
I see.
But they could also refile it anytime they want.
We have a question earlier.
It's kind of a carrot and a stick thing.
Derek Moore asked, let me find it here. He wanted to know, and Dan, I'm going to defer to you on this. Derek Moore asked, most of Android patches have been merged into the mainline kernel, and ARM device tree patches just got merged into the 3.7 kernel this past week. Do you think that will help update any lag problem on Android? I mean, Android right now is still on 3.0.
That's not true.
How is it not true?
What version of Android?
The Galaxy Nexus on Jelly Bean.
Yeah, that's going to be a TI problem, really, more than anything else.
But I'm still correct though that the Galaxy Nexus is still on the 3.0 kernel.
I mean, I don't know. I don't have a Galaxy Nexus. I can tell you the Nexus 7 is on a 3.1.
It is. The Nexus 7 is on 3.1. The Galaxy Nexus is on 3.1.
But I mean, in either case, Android kernels on actual living devices are still vastly behind where the current Linux kernel release is. I think 3.6 came out just a couple of weeks ago, very recently, and I know 3.7 is moving along rapidly.
So I mean, not unless we see 3.6 or 3.7 on the next Nexus. I mean,
right. I mean, that's the other thing is Android does tend to make leaps to catch up, but even when they do that, they're still pretty behind.
And a lot of custom kernels will cherry pick. They'll cherry pick new updates and backport them a lot of the time.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the update process, I don't think it's the kernel that's holding it back. I mean, the transition to ICS had a lot of things that needed to get changed in the kernel. The transition from ICS to Jelly Bean, a lot less so. I mean, there's some things for Project Butter that need to get ported in for vSync, but by and large, it just isn't as significant. So, I mean, once in a while, getting these devices over that hump to ICS, to 4.x, once they're past that, I think that slow updates from there is just slow manufacturers, and there's not a lot we can do about that.
Well, hopefully, I hope hopefully a much more advanced version comes out with the next batch of Nexus devices at least.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's on the chip manufacturers, right? Like Qualcomm, I'm pretty sure is not building on a 3.6 kernel for their brain. There just isn't 3.6 code for Qualcomm chips. It doesn't exist. Last time I looked, they were working on 3.4, which is still well ahead of anything in any device. But
so the kernel is basically a base level for chips to support certain kernel attributes?
Not just chips. It's really sort of the thing that is the layer between the physical hardware in the device and the operating system running on the device. So it's controlling your image processor, it's controlling your voltage regulators, it's controlling your CPU regulation, it's controlling all of those low-level functions.
Low-level functions that can ultimately make your device awesome.
or totally broken.
Or totally not even workable.
Yeah. I mean, the kernel is doing very low-level things like saying, give this much voltage to this specific power rail in your Wi-Fi module to turn it on at that frequency. Right? Like, you see and you go and you touch and you tap, turn on Wi-Fi. The operating system uses basically a kernel API to say that intent has been sent, and then the kernel actually executes the physical telling the Wi-Fi module to go and do that.
Interesting. Yeah, I just started running Franco kernel, and I'm experimenting with some of those features.
Wow. Scott.
Created a monster, Derek.
You are an animal. You're rooting, you're ramen, you're kerneling. I don't know what the hell else. What are you gonna flash next? You know?
I don't know.
I don't know. Like
Is
random.
there anything else left to change?
You can flash some random APK or random zip file that will change random things. You know, more customization. You know, like maybe
Attract themes.
I know inverted G apps. There you go. That's your next thing.
Ooh. I'm intrigued.
Okay. Well, basically, inverted G apps. You know, regular G apps are all white. Let's say you have a black theme and you want black G apps to match. So basically, somebody went out.
Or you want your device to use less power.
Oh yeah, that too. So somebody went out there.
Particularly on an AMOLED screen.
Can I get my
Galaxy Nexus
can I get my explanation, Dan, or no? Tell me when I can talk. Can I talk now?
No.
All right. So. Okay. All right. So inverted G app, somebody decompiled like Gmail basically, and went in there and changed all the XML to go from white to black and black to white, or whatever color they decide to make it. Then recompile it. But yes, and as Dan said, it's actually better for your battery life because you know white is light and light is.
It depends on the type of screen.
That's true. You know, it's a.
On an AMOLED type display, blacks basically aren't using any power whatsoever, whereas on an LCD, it's still illuminating.
Using power, yeah.
Black.
It's still trying to make that black.
Right. Like it's illuminating a black color.
Yeah.
Whereas
Which
an
is very
AMOLED screen, it's just turned off.
Yeah.
So last thing Android related I want to talk about before we get out of here tonight is the big Android barbecue is now 2 weeks away. I'll be there in 2 weeks, and somehow a joke went horribly wrong and turned into this thing that people are now donating money to a fund for me to wear a pink gorilla suit.
That's fantastic. Where do I donate?
Yeah, so, you know, I made a few jokes about how I would wear a pink gorilla suit at the pool party at the big Android barbecue. And my loving friends and fans decided, well, he said it, he better do it. And they created
fantastic. Do you have a link?
I don't have a link, but it's already been posted in the comments. And, you know, if they actually raise the money, I'm gonna have to do it because that's a real, you know, that's a real jerk thing to do. If
You'd be a huge party pooper if you didn't do it.
I know. No. So I'm not saying to do it, but
yes, you are.
But there's already money in there, so
I'm saying you should do it.
You know what? There's free beer from a local microbrewery at the pool party. A guy's gonna be there, maybe in a gorilla suit, and it's pink for, you know, breast cancer awareness. Sounds like a good plan, I guess. Yeah, I mean, I'm just pushing.
Oh, the money goes to charity too. I'm all about this.
No, it doesn't go to charity. Well, yeah, it goes to the suit charity, and maybe, just maybe, if it's a success.
Well, the suit can't cost that much.
It was like $180, I think. But apparently, the guy that's in charge of it, Jody, he said he found cheaper versions of the suit. Someone even suggested a pink furry bikini. Yeah, I'm not doing that. I don't care how much money you raise. I'm not doing that. But
I heard him earlier, and he said that he would do it. So
yeah. But anyway, so yeah, so that's going on. So I'm dealing with that. That's about it. 2 weeks. Can't wait. Anything else? Any other questions before we?
This is fantastic.
Before we sign out for this evening here. I'm not seeing anything. We do have a volunteer for the pink furry bikini, though. I see now. Okay. Well, we'll see. Maybe we'll get a donation link up for that, and we'll be the pink furry suit couple, I guess. All right. So thanks for watching, and have a good night.